Okay, let's start over. There's a weird connection issue with the live stream. So today I'm going to talk about how I edit my photos. I'm going to go through the entire process of editing a job from beginning to end. I actually already shot this job and didn't really do the edit. What I mean is I completed this job months ago when I shot it because it was sort of a shoot and scoot situation in which I basically only have to shoot the job, hand off files, and I'm done. But because I want to share with you guys what my process is for how I edit images, I'm going to go through the entire step, beginning to end, of how I do that. I'm going to talk about some presets I use, not really presets, but sort of batch edit tools I use and that kind of thing. I think this will be helpful for anyone that is getting into event photography, has never really used Lightroom before. I'm going to make it very basic so everyone can follow along. It's good for other event photographers. If you're curious how other event photographers edit, maybe there's a few things I do differently than you that maybe you'd like to incorporate. I'm sure that I could probably benefit from some tips from other people too, because everyone's got their own little tips that can be very beneficial. Something's wrong with the stream though. Let's double check this. If you're just dropping in, give me a hello. Let me know you're here. I think there was an issue with YouTube where it said I was live. I wasn't live, and so I didn't start exactly at 10:15, and I think a lot of people bailed. So I'm going to wait for those people to rejoin. If there's just going to be 3 of you, so be it. Hey, Linda. We're going to begin in just a couple of minutes as far as my editing goes. If people miss stuff, I guess I can always go backward, no problem. And I'll just kind of recap what I've done so far. All right. So, what I'm going to have to do is when I switch over to Lightroom, I'm going to full screen, which kind of does a weird effect with OBS software, which is what I use to stream. Unfortunately, it won't let me screen capture all of Lightroom as far as the tabs go, which has a lot of important information that I want to share with you guys. So I'm going to have to go full screen. So I'm going to set that up. You guys will see a weird effect, but that's okay. So let's go. Let's see, display capture, there we go. All right, we are now in display capture. So let me know if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. You should see a full screen of Lightroom. I'll full screen it completely. So this again is a job I did not actually have to do the edit on because it was a shoot and scoot job. I've worked with this client for honestly I think like 8 to 10 years or 10 to 12 years even, pretty much almost as long as I've been a professional photographer. I have had this client. They've been great to me. I love them. They do good work. It's a nonprofit, but they do 2 large events every year. One is a dinner and one is a luncheon, and basically I come and I do your standard event photography. For them it always includes the same things. The first will be sort of documenting things as they're happening. People are trickling in. They love to get photographs of the staff, and so I shoot the staff. I shoot the staff interacting with people. You guys can see here. I think with the full screen, you guys should see my little arrow. And so I'm photographing staff members, interactions, and then eventually we move into a step and repeat. And I've actually done like POV captures of some of these step and repeats for you guys. I think this actual event, I do have one, I think, for this event, and I probably shared it on this channel. So we're going to see a lot of that. And then we move into your classic like dinner. I think this one's the dinner, not the luncheon, where we're going to see speakers on stage and that kind of thing. And I'll be documenting that. So the first thing I do as I edit to my own personality and my own taste. And what I mean by that is when I edit, I don't like bad photographs. I need to get rid of them as soon as possible. They bother me. I don't want to see them, right? So for me, the biggest part of editing is actually culling my images and editing down. So that's the first thing I do. Sometimes I do this right away, but what I'm going to do is hit Command A. And what I'm going to do on the right side, I'll go to my develop module, which I can hit D on the keyboard as a shortcut. And I'm going to change Adobe Color. Let's switch to a more interesting image, not one that's underexposed. And I'm going to switch. Notice I have everything selected by hitting Command A. I'm going to go to Camera Faithful. I often find that's a better starting point than Adobe RGB, in which Adobe is interpreting color for you. I like Canon's colors. It's not always superior, and so if I hit Y on my keyboard, we can look at it before and after. You guys can see it. It does have more. They tend to have more magentas in the Canon neutral than you would in the alternative Adobe RGB. So that might be my first batch edit, something I hit Command A and do to all of my images. I will be honest with you guys, I actually am more than comfortable with just using Lightroom's presets. I had a lot of presets installed in the past, just because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see what like film presets were all about. I wasn't really a fan. I had like something like 50 different film presets out. And like maybe one or two of them were okay. I did like how it handled black and white files, like the Tri-X simulation was pretty good, but mostly I didn't care for it. Like I did not think Portra looked anything like Portra, and if I had to then tweak like crazy, it wasn't worth the trouble. So often I'll do like a medium or a light. It just depends on the type of work I'm doing. If I'm doing a lot of close-up portraits, I might start with, I don't know what's going on with my keyboard. I might start with a lighter sharpening. But anyway, you can always undo this. So I will, as a batch edit, also apply just medium contrast as a starting point. All right. I'm not sure it actually did it. There we go. All right. So medium updated on all 1,000 images. So then I'm going to hit G and go back to my library module. And now I'm going to start the first edit, the first round of my edit. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have a system, but I deviate from the system. I don't always just go and edit like one way. Well, this is round one, and so I only do this. I don't do that. It depends on how creative I'm feeling. Sometimes I'm excited to do the edit, and I spend in my first round, which is usually just editing down, I'll actually do some tweaks to the files because I'm excited about them. So I'm all about hotkeys. First hotkey, I've already said a few, but the first hotkey in this process I want to talk about is X. X is basically just to set something as a reject, and that's what I'm going to do in my first round. I'm going to hit Tab so I can see more images at once. Any image that just isn't up to par, I'm going to hit X. I have two identical images here, but my flash fired differently because it probably needed a recharge on the second one, but I actually prefer the second one, so I'll hit X on the first. Another tip, if you guys want, there's different ways you can filter out images you set as a reject. One, you can go down to the filter on the bottom. I can click on the first flag and the second flag, which will be flagged and unflagged, basically everything but rejected photos, and then I will only see those. I need a new computer, so it's loading, but we'll give it a minute. But yeah, it normally doesn't take this long. It's annoying. But now every time we look at an image, every time we delete or reject an image, we're only going to see what hasn't been rejected. Oddly enough, it's still applying a preset. It's never been that long. It's a little bit strange. I think, honestly, just streaming, it takes so much of my computing power. When you have an old computer. It's tempting to cancel the preset, but I'm going to let it finish. It's almost there. Alright, there we go. So now every time if I see this image, I hit X and it's going to disappear. We got to do that again. Okay, now we're in business. So I can use the arrow keys instead of clicking around. Blink, click X, hit spacebar to get a closer look, hit X, he's blinking. We got two images. It's pretty simple to figure out which one I like more. I could tone this one down. The flash is too high. And what happened was I actually should have been compensating more. But when my flash fired again, it's actually underpowered because it didn't recycle enough, but it actually looks better. So this between these two, I'll hit X on this one. Another option, let's go back, Command Z a couple times, which will let me go back. We can also hit C for compare, look at them both, decide which one looks better, and then make a decision. So in that case, that one, I had both selected, so Command D, then select that one, hit X. I repeat hotkeys because when I teach, I find that repetition is really important. By the way, a lot of these do need to be toned down with the color balance. I don't want to completely neutralize tungsten light because it has a nice glow to it. You can do that by using a gel or Canon, I guess all new Canon flash comes with a actual filter, so you can basically balance it with ambient tungsten light. But I find it looks very artificial and worse. So I actually like having some of this ambient tungsten bleed into my subject matter. I'm happy with that. However, it does need to be toned down a bit. So here it's an X, or I hit C by accident, hit X. We can go hit G again. Look at multiple images. Her expression on this shot, in this shot's not that great. You could be really, yeah, that's a no go. That one was no good. What's up, Chris? I have a smaller, fewer people watching today. I think it had to do with I didn't go live on time because something happened. I clicked on go live. Maybe it was my fault. Here we have another image. I just don't see a lot of her face. There's that hand there. That's an easy crop. I'm going to go through Lightroom as if I'm talking to people. Oh, I see why it's loading so long. It's an embedded preview. Okay, so I'm not going to do it right now. But one thing a lot of people will have trouble with when it comes to Lightroom is long load times. And a lot of people aren't realizing that when they're importing their files, Lightroom needs to generate a preview. And you might have the minimal preview, or you can have the largest preview setting, which would be a 1:1 preview. When you have a 1:1 preview, it's basically going to pre-render your previews so that every time you go to an image, it doesn't have to actually generate that preview. So if you did not do that, if I hit Command A, and I believe if I go, because I don't do it this way too often, you would go to library, I think, and we're looking previews, and we go build 1:1 previews. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to sit through that and make you guys sit through it, but then it will generate the previews so that each file will load quicker. So this probably, because I have that, it's definitely a superior image. I'm going to Command D. I'm going to hit X on that one, and it won't be a keeper. I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker. This isn't, like I said earlier, it's not an actual edit, meaning I don't need to do this edit because it's been done, meaning I handed off the files already because it was a shoot and scoot job. So these are very similar. I actually like the more neutral balance here. I can fix color later, but I'm going to go with the first one, so I'll hit X on that one. G to get back to library. Now I'm going to more quickly go through them. Okay, one thing I do other than Xing out, rejecting files on my first pass is that I will do some like crude adjustments, basically big old adjustments, not micro adjustments, just like in the library they actually make it easy to do this, where I can do third stop increments of exposure if I do one of the single arrows here, or full stops with the double arrow. So here, just by eyeing it, I can see it's about a stop and a half under, so I'll hit one stop, and maybe not a stop and a half, but a stop and a third. I'll do one more third. Now that I'm really seeing the image, it's not a solid image. It looks like my flash maybe didn't fire, but I'm gonna leave it. It's okay. Here we're a little bit high, so I can do like a third of a stop down, try another third. You guys get the idea. Now I don't know if there's a hotkey. I think possibly the plus and minus will work. Let's try that. No, that's just gonna change how many you can display on the grid, but I would love a hotkey for that, and I should look into it because I'm all about keyboard shortcuts because they save me a lot of time. I'm a lazy editor. I don't like editing files. It's the worst part of the job for me, and so anything that will make that a shorter process works for me. Here is what it looks like my ambient light was like, because I guess my flash did not fire. So you guys see I'm often balancing my ambient to be just under, like maybe under a stop exposed, so -1, and then my flash is then properly exposing for my subject matter. But I can just bring that back up. I kind of like this moment, kind of like the natural light. It's not as warm, it doesn't have the same glow. Let's see if it gives me information on if my flash fired. No, it did not fire, but let me see. Did fire, yeah. So here's the ambient look after being adjusted by a stop about, and here is with my flash. So one thing, of course, I know this might be remedial for a lot of you guys, but what you can do is select multiple images and batch edit. There's a lot of ways you can do that. One, I'm hitting Command D. I can hit on this. I can hit this image. If I were to do a lot of changes, so let's go into develop. Let's pull the exposure up. Maybe I decide it needs contrast. Maybe not. Maybe I pull it down. Whatever. But maybe I want my blacks to be more of a black. It doesn't matter what I do. I can then go, while in develop, I can actually copy the settings by hitting Command C, just like cut and paste, and I can pick what settings I want, hit copy, move over to the next image, and then hit Command V, and it will apply those settings. Alternatively, if you have 3 images that are all the same, and they pretty much are, by the way, I can leave it on auto sync, which will change everything together. So if I want to add medium contrast to everything, and if we move to other images, we'll see that has been applied. I don't like it. We're going to go back to linear. Last way you can do things, if you look at the little tab here, click on that. Now I can sync things manually, and what that means is, like, let's say I go crazy. Oh, that actually didn't do much. Pulling my red luminance all the way up didn't do that much. But let's say I want to stylize my image, which you guys probably know I do not want to do. But then I can hit sync and then apply it to everything. It's the same as cut and paste, basically. So Command C, Command V. Now I'm basically doing a mock edit. I'm not actually going to go through everything. Just making sure mic levels are okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not going to do an actual edit because it doesn't need it. But one thing I do want to do, because it's important I do this, is I do want to rate I actually need to rate this job, and we'll go through that later. But let's go through it. You guys get the idea. First edit, I'm just hitting X on my rejects. So that's actually, I think I'm testing my light. Just going through them. When I shoot a step and repeat, one thing that's important is you want a good amount of room on the edges. One thing people don't consider is that if you hit R for a crop, let's say you're shooting a birthday party, something people might actually order prints of. If you have printing enabled on whatever service you use, I use SmugMug, but I don't really rely on print sales, and haven't made a print sale in years because I do more corporate events. But if someone orders like an 8x10 sized print and you don't have enough room, you guys see what it does. It crops in. So for example, let's go to an image like this where I didn't leave a ton of room, but I knew these images wouldn't be used in this way. But let's say someone ordered an 8x10 print and it looks something like that. We're now getting really tight on the edges, and that's really important that we avoid that. You guys have any questions for my workflow, let me know and I'll address them. So I don't really want to go through every image and X out stuff. You guys will see I'm pretty consistent. I don't have too many rejects. I try not to overshoot these. I don't think it takes more than 2 to 3 attempts to get a good shot where everyone's eyes are open, smiling, etc. I'll do things like hit R for my crop. You guys can see my horizon line is off, and so I'll go just above the corner and I'll adjust it. Hit enter, that kind of thing. So I'm going to do a speed run and pretend we're doing the edit. It looks like what I was doing here is actually just getting staff, and then I went back to get everyone getting ready. That's one of the speakers arriving. Obviously I have color balance issues here. So I also noticed I changed the power of my flash to kind of get a more evened out ratio between my flash exposure and my ambient. Some are a little dark, but I knew that while shooting it, but I knew it would be a very easy fix, like a third of a stop increase. So here these images are all a little under, for example. We can simply either in develop or library just move them up. Another hotkey option, if you're hovering on exposure, you can just hit the up or down arrows to kind of get what you want. I already know the shadows need to be pulled up. And let's take a look how that turned out. Now I noticed I don't normally use the manual sync, but I had it on, so let's go back because I was demonstrating that. Now we'll hit sync. Usually I leave auto on. I've never seen the point of having multiple images selected and then only applying it to one. It's all reversible, so it's not really a problem. Like if you're testing an edit on one image out, and you might as well just only select it, is how I feel. So again, going through them, here's an sometimes I hit C. Here's an X. Now you guys see how when I hit X it disappears, and that would be because I have it set to only show my picks and my unpicked. So here is an image I need to zoom in on a little bit to decide. It's not a great image. I don't know what she's looking at. If she were looking at him or her, it would work. If I were doing a speed edit, I'd probably, good morning, Doug, I'd probably include it. It just depends. They're both under. I'm not really, you can if you want. You can do color correction. I do mine in phases, but I also kind of freestyle it a little bit too. And sometimes even though I'm in my phase where I'm just getting rid of bad shots, I might do the color correction on the spot. Like here, I don't know what happened. This is like a lot hotter than the other images. As far as color correction goes, we can, if they have white-ish teeth, we can use that. That's not going to work for him. This was a white wall. Here's the tricky part. We have a lot of Christmas tungsten lights. And so if I hit that, it's going to neutralize it, right? That's too much. And so sometimes I do that and then I bring the warmth back in. Sometimes I just tone it down manually. So I'm going to hit reset on this image. Sometimes I'll just like tone it manually. That kind of works for me. Where we have a more neutral, but it wasn't like when we clicked on what was a white wall that was kind of has a color cast to it because of all the Christmas lights, but you guys see the difference. It's just too neutral. So Command Z to undo. One thing I do want to do is go through these files after. I'm not going to do the whole edit down, but I want to go through them and then make some selections and show you guys how I do it and what are some options for you. Yeah, we don't need to go through all of these. That's Stella. She organizes the event. It's important to get a lot of shots of the person who puts the event on. So they don't have a large budget. It is a nonprofit. So it's not a cheap event. So I'll be clear about that. They do go all out. But they don't really ask for a second photographer. They usually have staff do it. And so I'm not really free to do roaming photography when I'm shooting the step and repeat. But sometimes what I'll do is, like, if it gets slow and I see a moment happening somewhere, I'll quickly run over. And so here I quickly ran over and attempted to use the available light of the photo booth. But this is like super fast. And I think it required a pretty high ISO 2000. And so, you know, it's not ideal. But just quickly grabbing it, hit X on that, grabbing what I can, and then returning to my step and repeat. When I returned, they asked, we can delete that one, if I could do an impromptu headshot of the director of the organization. And so what I did for these is I basically looked for a big white wall, pointed my flash at it, and created like a giant softbox effect. If we zoom in, we can see a reflection of my cat. You can see in the catch light a reflection. So is this the most perfect headshot? Probably not. Were they happy? Yes. This is on the fly headshot style. Like, hey, can you quickly grab a shot of this? This needs to be cropped in more. I notice in doing critiques, a lot of people make the same mistake I make still. And I make it because I am a compulsive refocuser. I'm always trying to refocus on the eye, and my focus points are toward the middle, and basically I'm not able to compose my shots the way I want because I don't like recomposing, but that's probably a more natural crop. All right, I think there's a question. Do you use a battery pack with your flash for long events or just bring spare batteries? Yeah, I don't have a battery pack. I experimented with one with my old 580 EX2. It worked fine. I question if I'd like to start using one, but I like to work really light, and I think that would be an issue. But it's really frustrating when your flash just isn't recycling fast enough. So I personally, at this time, do not use a battery pack, but if you're willing to carry one around, I do recommend it. So I shared with you guys in the past a step and repeat. It was that Vanity Fair event. So like maybe I'd okay, that's a blink. She blinks a lot, to be honest. So we could touch these up too and make it look a lot nicer if we want. We could do skin retouching. This is totally a usable headshot for her, I think. So I'm happy for like the 2 seconds I was given to create a headshot. I'm happy with what I was able to do. So back to the battery pack. I want to look into that myself. It's something I'd consider, but obviously right now. I'm not looking to expand. I'm not looking to make big purchases because event photographers aren't really working minus like one-off events, you know. So I'm not looking to spend money, even if it were like $60. So Yeah, right now I'm just not using a battery pack. I've tried one in the past. I would appreciate one. But what I wanted to say is I'm the house photographer at a job like this and the only photographer. And minus an assistant, they kind of provide me. They'll have someone kind of supplement my photography, a non-professional, a staff member basically. But what I am doing here is, as the only photographer, I kind of am controlling the situation. I'm the only camera that people are looking at. And so when I'm doing the step and repeat, I don't have to fire off a million shots the second they look at me, because I'm not competing with other photographers. Okay, so if you're just joining, I'm doing sort of a half-hearted job at it because I don't really need to do this edit. If I actually had to get this done, I would. It's a mock edit, but I'm in my first stage where I'm just looking through them, and I'm looking for blinks, bad shots, flash didn't fire shots. I saw a moment, didn't have time to change my settings, so I grabbed that. So yeah, just those types of shots, and images that are similar I'm editing down, because you don't need to give them 2, let alone like 5 similar images. You want your images to be very minimal. I mean, yeah, you want to just give 1 shot of each moment. Another thing, it looks like I actually did enter a few keywords. So if I have all of mine selected, I can always add keywords. So for me, I probably don't need, I still shoot other types of work. So I usually put event photography, or I mostly use keywords for if there's anyone notable, celebrities, politicians. I shoot a lot of like political, well, I was shooting a lot of political events. I was shooting a fair amount of celebrities. So I'll like add in their names just in case I ever need to search them up. You can also create smart collections, which is something I don't really do, but I probably should start. Smart collection would be like a virtual collection. It's not actually transferring the files. You're just putting them all virtually in a folder into a collection. I don't do that. I should do it. But what I actually do is I like to make a physical copy of the files. So I'll have like a political gallery, a gallery for my website, a gallery for social media, not gallery, but a folder, that kind of thing. So there's Duval Patrick. He actually was running for president, but I assume he dropped out at some point. Didn't even make news when he did. At least I didn't come across it, but yeah. So what I need to do, so this would be my first step. I find every pass I take, every pass I take, I pretty much am going to edit down more and more. 2 to 3 passes are good. Also, time helps edit down because you become less attached to your own work when you look at it like a week later. But as I've said before, it's really, you're juggling like a timely delivery with a good edit. And sometimes, it's like I'd rather get the files to my client sooner than do a whole other pass or 2, which takes a lot of time for me, just to edit down like another 10 images. Like, make it easy for them, but there's diminishing returns, I think. This isn't your beautiful like swan dance or whatever, right? So if you don't get it perfect, it's okay. Okay, so another trick I do, I try to edit in camera. So basically, any downtime, I'll quickly scroll through my images and edit down, because also it displays very quickly. I find it's very quick for me to edit images down in camera. It's just really easy. The images don't take time to load. You just quickly go through them, edit down as much as you possibly can. Like when I shot weddings and would have second shooters, like I begged them to do their own edit as much as they could so that I didn't have to go through a lot of bad files. As I've said, that's the worst part for me. I don't like looking through like bad work. So you guys can see though, most of these are good moments that I don't need to edit out. Like let's take a look at this image and compare it to the next one. I don't know why it didn't compare it to the next one right away. Okay. There's a decent enough argument for both of these shots. I think I would probably keep the one on the left if I were to have to choose between the two. But, you know, it's not so bad them looking off, having a more candid moment. I'm not going to agonize over which is better if I can't decide between images like this. Odds are people there are going to appreciate them both, and so I'll deliver them both. Don't know what happened here. Let's bring those down. It's kind of weird. Also, my composition's a little off. Something may have happened there. I don't recall what it was. I don't always compare. Sometimes I just go back and forth. Very similar images. So sometimes the best thing to do is go with your gut and not overthink it. Like, which one do you as a person connect to more? And I think I connected to that one more. So that's it. Mark that one as a reject and move on. So here we have a lot. I don't know why I shot more images than I normally would. So that one's a no. I feel like I connect more with that one than this one, so I'll reject that one. These are very similar. Just sometimes they're almost exactly the same. If it comes to that and it's not about like which one feels different, I'll actually zoom in and I'll compare sharpness. It's loading, but I don't think I'm going to see a big difference. Hit Z to zoom out. So in this situation, I'm going to go with this one. The woman on the right's eyes are a bit more open, so that one will be a reject. Hit G, quickly go through it. So when time is a factor, my first edit will just be very crude. So I'm just using my keyboard arrow keys to bounce around and do the very obvious rejects, like without having to zoom in. Then I'll get in a little closer. I think that's his parents. Danny runs the, I don't know what you call it, the operations booth. It might be his parents. Okay. Doug has a question. Do you always use Lightroom for this stage? I don't use Photo Mechanic or Bridge. And I'm assuming you're asking because people talk about it being quicker. For me, so a lot of people, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of people don't realize they're not actually generating full previews of their images. And so that's why every time they go to an image, it has to render that preview. For those of you guys just joining, you can, when you do an import, you can actually, do I have like a memory card somewhere? I could show it to you guys probably, but when you do an import, you have an option to generate previews. It might be checked to do the minimal. And if it's on the minimal, every time you like open an image, it has to generate that preview. So if you didn't do that and you have all of your images selected, so I hit Command A, and you go up to Library, Previews, you can build one-to-one previews. And that's honestly, it takes a lot of time. If you're looking to quickly upload your files, or maybe you have multiple memory cards and you want to get them into a gallery. So for example, you guys know weddings aren't my main thing. They're not really my thing anymore. I have 2 coming up. That's it. And both are friends or family, basically. Not real family, but like a family member to me. And so I do have that coming up. When I used to shoot weddings, getting home at like 1 or sometimes even 2 a.m. and I'd be exhausted. I couldn't go to sleep until I felt like my memory cards were like safely uploaded to a computer. That way I had at least 2 copies, because it was a fear, losing your files. It's important. Like for me to go to sleep, I needed 2 copies. And especially using slower memory cards back then, it would take a long time. And one way to save time would be to not actually import through Lightroom, but to just drag the files into the folder and then add that folder when you're ready to Lightroom. This is good if you're going to do multiple memory cards and you don't want to like tie down Lightroom, because if you start doing multiple imports, I don't even remember if you can actually do multiple imports. You can do multiple things in Lightroom, but I'm not sure you can start a second import. Someone maybe can comment if they know the answer to that. It's not something I do. But what you can do is then just add it to Lightroom rather than copy the files. You're just cataloging it. But as I was saying, when you first do your import, if you have the time and you want a faster edit once you're ready to edit, meaning you don't have to do this right away, you can generate the previews as one-to-one, and that will build one-to-one previews, and that will make your workflow a lot quicker. Now, I don't really want to do it right now because it's going to take a lot of time. So it does improve your speed because you don't have to generate those previews, but for right now it would take time and I don't want to have to do that. I hope that answered your question. That's why I don't use Bridge or Photo Mechanic. My understanding though is the argument in favor of it is speed, because Lightroom's slower, but Lightroom doesn't have to be slow. It could be slower than it needs to be if you're not doing one-to-one previews. So here you can see actually I cranked up my aperture to 6.3 rather than what I'm usually at, like sometimes 2.8 if it's only 2 people, but like 3.5, that kind of thing is where I'm usually at. That was 2.8. So when I cranked up my aperture, my flash had to work harder and it didn't recycle in time for these shots. It's probably rescuable, but considering I had some where the flash did fire, we don't need to. So we'll just select all of them and hit X. Okay, I'm going to scroll through this and then I want to talk about rating systems once we get through it, because then I actually talk about ratings, how I rate my files, and that kind of thing. There's a lot of files here. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I actually shoot a little bit looser than I normally would, this being a job I don't actually have to edit. And I know that sounds kind of like, I don't know. Like on one hand, I should shoot maybe even tighter, considering I'm not going to edit down for them, but I know they're just looking for the highlight moments. These files that we're looking at now, these are actually displayed during dinner on 2 projection screens. So to the sides of like the speaker, there's screen, like, or before they even approach, they're already showing those files as people start to eat. So what I'm doing when I shoot the speaker on stage is I'm really just looking for that moment. Once I know I've captured the moment, I can then relax and do some more artistic stuff, or I can go eat myself, that kind of thing. So I'm looking for like the hero moment. Also, as the MC, she will be up on stage multiple times, and so there's less pressure to get the shot. But if I stage from multiple angles, she's a little bit shorter, so it's kind of hard to really get the right shot I wanted. You guys can see here I have a lot of shots. I normally don't shoot this much, so I'm looking for like good moments like that. Maybe that's a good moment. Needs a little bit of an adjustment to exposure. some speakers don't pause between sentences, blink a lot, and it requires more work. Some are easy. Often they'll have an actor be the MC. They're the easiest, especially if they're like more of a personality than an actor, like a person. I don't know what you call those, TV personalities, whatever. If there's a logo, I always try to get a shot with the logo in it. So Doug says he never uses Photo Mechanic, but everyone says he should. He uses Bridge for the culling stage, which stage, then sometimes go to Lightroom Classic for renaming and exports. Lots of ways to do it. But what about the edit? How are you doing the edit? Are you doing it in Lightroom still? Because you said you sometimes go to Lightroom. And then Chris says, what ISO setting is this? Is the speaker? It is ambient. I'm not even gonna look because I'm gonna guess I'm at 1250, and now I'll look. Right here, 1250. It's almost always 1250. I've shot a lot of these, and it's almost always 1250. And I only ever used flash for when I was shooting with the 5D Classic. I found that its high ISO performance was so bad that it needed it. So getting a wide shot, you guys can see on the left here, they have a screen. During dinner, while people are sitting down, they're displaying the photographs I took at the step and repeat. Okay, so there's a lot to go through. So let's kind of quickly scroll through it because I'm gonna have to scroll through it once more. Where normally I would the name of the game is editing down. Don't need a million shots of like people. Today, because I actually do have a reason to do my edit, and that is to make some selections because I'm trying to get better about doing that. The only reason I didn't do that is because this was not an edited job. It was a shoot and scoot. But normally I do a selection process. I don't just edit down and do the edit. I actually look for selects for you guys, basically for making YouTube content, for putting into a social media folder for the Instagram account I barely keep up, for my Google business page, Yelp if you want it. I don't really actively use Yelp, but right now what we're seeing here is a break in the program, and so usually I'm getting pulled over for specific shots of VIPs, that kind of thing. Now we're back to the speakers. So here's, like, for example, I actually that one's only rated because I used it for the thumbnail. I actually did this the selection process earlier, like in December, but my computer crashed and I was lazy about my backups, and I lost the catalog and had to start fresh. So I have to redo it. You guys can see if I hit Y, by the way. Let's take a look at how changing to Canon's Camera Faithful profile changes color. You guys can see a little bit more magenta, less green. So on the left, we can see how the file looked originally, and on the right, we see how it looked if I hit D for develop and go to Camera Faithful. So here's Adobe Color, and here's Camera Faithful. I find Camera Faithful looks better to me most of the time, probably 90% of the time, but not always. So here's an important person to look for the best shot of, because that's Deval Patrick. I forgot what he's governor of. Let me see. I feel like it's Massachusetts. Or is it Patrick Duvall? I always forget. No, Duvall Patrick. Former governor of Massachusetts. I thought he was still in office, actually. Okay, former governor of Massachusetts. So this is a VIP. This is someone I might want to display on my website. So this is an image I'm going to be looking for like the best version of. You know, I guess actually somehow I must have gone and rated some of them. Let's take a look. Let's hit the red filter. No, because I would have selected more. But I already did select these. I think they were all just potential thumbnails for this video. But yeah, I have to reselect. All right, let's go through them all. I'm scrolling. You guys can see how many shots I got. Try to hit every angle. The angle there that's most flattering. The angle that's aesthetically most pleasing. The angle that includes the logo. And ideally, all of those will be captured in one. But sometimes it's not going to be. Most people don't have the photography in mind when they're actually planning everything, like where to put their logo and that kind of thing. So you can see I shot a lot more of him than any other speaker. I don't remember if he was the keynote speaker. It looks like he may have been. Yeah, he was. The keynote speaker, received an award. But also for personal reasons, I photographed more of him. And you guys, if you want to take a look at my work, I'll link it. But I've been shooting more and more political events. It's something I very consciously have made an effort to do. I want to shoot more. I want a niche. I find that no one's really... I mean, there's a lot of like DC photographers, but my goal is to be the photographer in Los Angeles that people go to when they need a photographer. It's the only time I've ever kind of combined interests. I do follow politics. I try not to follow the drama of it, but I do follow politics, and for the first time, I actually don't mind combining my interest in politics with my photography. There's been times I have, I have combined things, but it's usually in non-traditional ways. When I kind of explored Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in my photography, I didn't just go and photograph. I think I didn't have the right lens to grab that shot. The composition's a bit strange, but it works. Lost my train of thought. Just want to take a second to also plug my page I made for you guys. It's basically a page that includes all of my favorite event photography videos I've done. However, rather than just looking through my channel or relying on the algorithm, you can go to this page and just look at all the videos with a little blurb about each, and then you can decide which to watch. So I'm going to link that. Also, if you're just joining, if you want to support my channel and help this video reach other people, giving it a like would really help me out. All right. Scroll through them. It's kind of tough to get both of them. She was a lot shorter. I couldn't really shoot from the right to get her, if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm ending up with kind of strange compositions here. I'm not a fan of them, but I ideally wanted to get a shot with both of them in focus, but it was really tough to get that. You guys can see she kind of disappears behind him. Try to get all, again, different angles, different orientations, wide shots. I wish I could get more wide shots actually, but I'm not really able. This honestly, it's not necessary, but it would help to have a second photographer at this job. And that's something I'm just going to pitch to them next time. Here, I'm just saying it is very, very, very dimly lit here, which is funny. I guess normally I'd be wide open photographing the speaker on stage, but I think I moved up to 3.5 to try to get both of them, and then I quickly wanted to do some crowd work. This is just super low light, super low light. I mean, there's almost no light on any of these people. I never go to ISO 4000. I should have been at f2.8, but again, it's because I was photographing the speakers and trying to get them both in focus. But you got to try things, you know, and here I'm trying to challenge my own comfort zone, to challenge my own like ways, which for me, when I first got the 5D Mark III after experimentation, I decided, okay, ISO 3200's my limit. That's as high as I could go without running into like horrible grain, pixelation, whatever. But now I'm like challenging that, you know, you got to challenge your beliefs, I think, your ways as a photographer to grow. This guy was a cool looking guy. He's a music executive. Monique, what time span are you taking the pictures of the speakers? How long were they up there that you were walking around? Depends. Some of them went on for quite a while. Could be 10 minutes. Some maybe 3 to 5. I can't really remember, in all honesty. Here's the thing. I have no problem. Like, I can go 9 hours without eating. I'm used to it, and I'll do that. But I have no problem eating. They want me to eat. You know, they take care of me. And so when I get the shots I need, I will quickly go to my table and sneak in some food. So it's not like I'm just shooting. I'm usually making sure I get the shots I need and images that I feel define the moment. That could be a serious moment, maybe like this shot here. It could be a big laugh, a big smile. Yeah, I'm going to kick myself if I miss that. So I try to like minimize the periods of time in which I'm not ready, kind of on standby in one of my go-to positions. I usually have one specific position I'm in because, again, I don't know when you joined the stream, but when it comes to this event, I shoot it twice a year, 2 different locations, and so I know where my best spots are. And then the other spots are kind of like I'd be blocking people, and so I don't linger there. I'm usually going into position, looking for the shot I need, and then moving on. So, for example, of all these shots, I really only need one, and it would probably be this one, right? There's no purpose. They're not going to use all the other images, right? They're going to look at, if they even want one of these in the series, they're going to look at these, and they're going to decide which one's best for their social media. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the hero shots that would be the defining moment, the one that they would use in social media. I'm not really looking to get just a million different shots of each person. And I don't want to burden my client with that either. Now, the reason I'm a little looser in shooting, as I mentioned before, is because I know they have a team that's going to do the edit, and I'm more interested in just making sure I get that shot. Usually I'm combining that drive to get the defining moment with me not wanting a complicated edit for myself, so I'm just doubling down on shooting with intention. I'm not pressing that shutter unless I'm sure. I like the way the background worked for this one. So all these are a little bit underexposed. That's an easy fix because we are looking at raw files. But that said, I'm providing them with JPEGs, which, I don't love. I don't love that. I don't love the idea of not having some control over my edit, but would I prefer to do the extra work? And the answer is no. I'd rather them do the work and me not have control. But one thing I do with my JPEGs is that I find usually I do a custom setting where I tone down the contrast a little bit. It's too tungsteny usually, these lights. It's easy. They look good, the raw files, but the way Canon processes JPEGs as a default, they don't usually look too good. And so I'm usually altering them. I'm basically reducing contrast, saturation. So you guys can see it's very dimly lit. And using strobes aren't an option really. I mean, I could, but when photographing the crowd, I'll sometimes have my second body with a flash on it if I need to get reaction shots of the crowd. But everything's black. The ceiling's painted black, the walls are black, and so it's tough. So that's why I started experimenting with more ambient. Sometimes I use the diffuser cap on my flash. Okay, so what time is it? Okay, we've been at it an hour. I really need to move on to sort of how I rate my files, and there's different ways. I'm going to tell you guys how I do it. I'm going to talk about other options you guys will have. So in Lightroom, you have many different ways to rate files. One is pick, unpicked, or rejected. So just casually going through these, I'm going to click off my picked and unpicked. I can click my rejected, and then it will show everything I marked for to be rejected. And for me, I just delete those. You can keep them, you can just keep them hidden. I usually hit Command A, hit delete on the keyboard. I'll show you guys what that looks like. Delete from disk. You can also remove it from Lightroom. I don't see the point in that because you can always just make sure it's not selected if you just don't want to see them, That's the first one, and that's the one I use for editing down. Next, we have a star system. I do use a star system, but rather than rate every file, because that would be tedious, I'm usually rating only 3, 4, or 5 stars. If it's a 1 or a 2, honestly, it was already selected as a reject. One way you guys might want to do it, though, if you want to rate everything, is you can hit Command A, and you can start off by giving everything 3 stars. Oh, I didn't. Wait. Okay, sorry. I haven't done that in a while. So hit Command A, and then you can use your keys on your keyboard to hit the number 3, and it set everything to be a number 3. Now, if we look, we can hit 3 stars, and now we're only seeing everything 3 stars above. That's either rated as a pick or not rated at all. So that's basically everything. So you could do that. And then when you go through your files, you can basically decide what's not a 3 and if there's anything that's a 4 or a 5. For me, although this is a perfectly pleasant candid, it's not going to get a 4, it's not going to get a 5, because I equate my ratings to its intended use. So basically, a 4 means this is worthy of my portfolio, especially if it's maybe a celebrity, someone like that. And a 5 is basically my best work, where I'm like, this is like an incredible shot. So like if we go to my website, we can kind of take a look at maybe something so parties, let's see if I added it, a recent job. Like from this job, for example, I thought this was not only a great shot for my portfolio, but kind of an epic shot overall. So it probably got a 5, for example. So I do use 3-star ratings. If I'm going to maybe do a blog post about it, a 3-star can work. A 3 is a good image. It's something that maybe is part of telling a story. It could be a wide shot, which to me are never really 4s or 5s, but it could be like just like an establishing shot, that kind of thing. Your other option next is your color ratings, which you can also, I think, bind to a hotkey on Lightroom? Well, yeah, of course you can. What am I saying? I use them differently. So when I'm this kind of job, any corporate event, that kind of thing, I'm not gonna make anything a black and white. It's just not what its intended use. Like, it's not gonna be used that way. I save that for if I were shooting a wedding, maybe if I were shooting like a birthday party, some artistic black and whites can work. So the first one of the color badges I use would be blue, and blue means I'm going to convert it to black and white. So let's say I went through my editing process, and the hotkey for blue for me, and I think you can change it, is 9 for blue, and maybe I hit a bunch of images or have similar images next to each other, and I feel like they both kind of work, but one would be a better black and white, and maybe I make that a black and white. So maybe I make this one a black and white between the two. Let's say I've done that for a bunch of images. After I've completed my first round of edits, or my second round really, so I edit down, then I do all the color balance, color contrast, etc., the basics. Then because I want that to be done to my black and whites, I'll filter by clicking on the little blue square here, and then I have all my black and whites. I'll usually hit Command A, select them all, hit V on the keyboard, which is the hotkey for convert to black and white, and then after I've done that, I can individually play around with each of those files. So I can go to each one, adjust contrast as needed, that kind of thing. So I'm going to hit Command Z because I don't want to convert those actually. And I'm actually going to hit 9 again, and I don't know why it didn't do it to them all, but I don't want any of them to be black and white because they won't be used that way. So next, I like the other codes. It's just all like for me personally. I do red for stuff like where they're not necessarily, it has nothing to do with what I rate them. It just means I will use it for YouTube, or I'm going to use it for a blog post, something like that. So I give those a red label, and that would be 6 on the keyboard. So let's say, okay, that's a 6. I want to include this guy, whatever. That can probably be deleted. Maybe this guy, right? That's one thing I do. A 7 means sometimes like there's a shot I just don't want to deliver and I don't want to delete it, and I'll mark it with a 7, which would be yellow. Kind of like easy there, you know. Red could be stop, and that's not what I mean by red, but you know. I use yellow for things like, hey, there's a really cute squirrel playing in that tree. I wanted to get a shot of it, whatever. And it has nothing to do with the event I'm shooting. Or sometimes people really want to take a photo of me. They think that's this funny, novel thing. And so they'll insist that they take a photograph of me with my camera. And I'm not going to deliver that either. But maybe I want to keep it for some reason. So yeah, that's my color system. That's how I use that. I use green sometimes I've used it for different reasons. It just varies. I don't really use like the purple, the gray, but that's totally available to you if you want. And then the important thing to know is you can then always filter by your different ratings at the bottom of the screen here. You can give it stars, you can give it a color. So I can, I didn't go through this and properly rate things, but let's say I gave that a 4 and that a 4. Now I can do picks, unpicked, and anything. You can change it to at or above. So I'm doing at 4 or above, filtering down. And I can also see, okay, now I want to see let's see if I picked anything red, yellow. See, if I select all of them, I don't have any color. Oh, there it is. So that's uncolored. The last one, by the way. So that's how I use it. I'm going to wind down. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm not going to subject you guys. Unless you guys really want to watch me, you can tell me. If you really want to see me really rate these files, because I do need to do that. I think there are some good shots in here. I'm working on making a political folder on my website, and having some shots of Deval Patrick would help. He's pretty recognizable if you're in the political world, and that's important. As I've said, I'm really trying to carve out that specific niche for myself. I don't think anyone else is doing it. I enjoy it. The pay's decent. They tend to pay my rate without any questions asked, which is nice. So I'm really looking to expand on that. So I will start. So I'm going to select all, and if you actually give everything like a red and then turn it off, that's one way you can just get rid of all the red rate. Oh no, it didn't work that way. I thought it did. Okay, sorry. If you select everything, give it all a red rating, I hit 6, and then I hit it again, that's one way you can like deselect anything that you marked as red, theoretically. There it is. I think it's just loading. There it is. Okay, now nothing's rated red. So ideally, I could just always give everything a 3. That's a reject. Because if it's a keeper, what did I do? If it's a keeper, it's probably at least a 3. Somehow I rejected everything. I don't know how that happened. So all these are nice photos, you know? But to me, what am I going to do with just another over-the-shoulder candid on my website? So I really need the person, and it feels icky to me, I'm going to be honest. But unless they're like recognizable, that kind of shot isn't something I'm going to then say, hey, I'm going to add this to my portfolio. This is kind of a weird shot. I don't know. But let's say I were doing just a blog post. I can do my rating system, and then because it's a 4-star doesn't mean you want it in the blog post, and then I can rate it a second time by giving them my little red badge, which is 6. So like, I like this photo of her. That's a nice shot. Maybe that one's a bit nicer. I can always go back and then edit down more. Maybe I think this is a good group shot, so I hit red because it will look good in a blog post, but it's not a 4-star file. Or maybe you're making a highlight gallery for your client, and then it would make sense to just kind of, you could just give all 4 or 5 stars, but you might realize this is a highlight moment for your client, but not necessarily a 4-star photo. So I'm not going to do that right now, although I probably, I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe I should blog post. I don't do it enough. So okay, I'll keep rating them. I'm gonna grab one of these because they're all staff members. I might want a shot of that, even though it's just your average kind of step and repeat shot. That one's kind of cute. Go with that. One of the speakers, I don't remember if she received an award or gave one out, but the shot's not great. This is the organizer, so although the shot's not great, maybe I would mark that with a red. They love these like staff shots. They always request it, even though they know I know. But they'll still ask sometimes, you know. They know I know how to cover their event because I've been covering it for 10 years. Now, one thing, yeah, I'm not super high on my ISO, but it looks like I was at 800. Something very casual about this composition that I kind of like. That's a no keeper. That one's okay. That one I think ultimately we would delete if I were actually delivering these to my client. Here's a shot that I probably could maybe rescue by cropping. So hotkey is R. Hit X to change the orientation. A little bit weird. Oops, didn't mean to tilt it. It's a little bit strange, but maybe that's fine. You're not delivering your portfolio, so it's okay if something isn't perfect compositionally. I don't really need to delete any of these because I'm not actually delivering this. Nice shot, but I really like the smile here. What can we do here? Well, technically our exposure is right. Our blacks kind of aren't really disappearing into pure black. If I turn the little arrow on in the top, you can see if I hover. So the question to ask is, does it really matter that I'm losing detail in those tiny specks? I don't know if it shows up to you guys. I think not, so I'm going to turn it off. But maybe just for your own personal taste, you want to pull up your shadows and kind of bring out more detail. That's an option. It's not necessary. This is, I think, a little subjective. I kind of more and more lately have liked my images to look more like they looked like there. I don't want to, like, if something's dimly lit, I want it to be reflected in the photograph, and I'm trying to combine that with like what's aesthetically pleasing. But I don't like making like nighttime photos look like they were daylight, that kind of thing. That's a really nice shot, I think, expression-wise. Here's two very similar images. That's tough. Okay, so what I will do, in order to really compare them, I'll bring this one in line with the other one exposure-wise. There we go. Now I can hit C and do a comparison. And if you're new to Lightroom, when you're comparing, you can always hit the up arrow, and that will make your candidate become your select. So you can kind of, if you're doing like multiple images, right, you can do that until you settle with, you go through them all, and then the one that's left standing as your select is your best image. So between these two, this is a good example of my lighting actually changed. If this were not an event, a corporate or nonprofit event, if this were a birthday party, something where you have more artistic license, you can hit 9, or I hit 9, and I mark one of them for blue with the blue label, which to me means, I'm actually just going to leave them as, I'm not going to do that, but to me that means I'm going to convert it to black and white later. And I don't convert individually because that's less efficient. What I do after I've completed all the stages of editing, my last bit will be selecting all my blue label images and then converting them to black and white all at once, and then individually going through them and making any further adjustments. Here's an image where I think the crop is not very good. I love shooting through people, but they're just too spaced out. So an alternative crop could be hitting R, hitting X, and just going full horizontal as a way of saving this image. I'll probably need to crop the headroom down as well. And what I'm doing, marking them red right now, is as if like maybe I were going to do a blog post or highlights to the clients. More specifically, I'd say, let's pretend we're doing highlights to clients. for the client, because I'm basically, if they are staff, I'm kind of marking them as a selected image because I know they'll use it. Here we can see an issue is how hot my highlights are. So I don't have to burn in here. I can just pull down my highlights. Let's try that. Let's see what happens, because this is white, so that's a good thing to, like, it's neutral. We can try sampling our color profile, whatever you call it. Use the picker to click on that and try to get something neutral. And like I said before, often the neutral shot, it doesn't quite look natural itself because we had very tungsten-like Christmas lights. So maybe I'll just warm it back up a little bit. So here's my before, here's my after. I think that's pretty natural. How's that warmth? I like. So here I am. I should probably be doing this in the grid because here I'm marking red, but then I'm seeing I have another one. Okay, so what I'm going to do, hit D, Command C, hit Enter, go over here, Command V, and paste the settings. And then maybe pull up the exposure a little bit. Now hit C. What's up, Aman? And then look at these two. I kind of like the one on the right, actually. It's tough. I like the one on the left. You see more of her face. It's turned more toward us. I kind of like the way the card is being handed off in this one. This one works too. I think the first one overall. Just going to pull up the warmth a tiny bit more. Alright guys, I'm going to say last call if you have a question for me. There's that delay, so in like 2 minutes I am really going to wind it down if you guys don't have questions for me. If you have questions, I'll keep going, but if not, I'm going to call it for today. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Seeing, if nothing else, you can see how other people or another person edits. Here's a shot that's way too high. Now, let's hit Command C. It's really the highlights that are blown. So what we can do is first try that. Now, there's a limit. Sometimes if you go too far, it looks cartoony. Sometimes you can only go so much without it looking off. So I can pull the highlights down, and then I can also pull my exposure down a little bit too. Try something like that. Maybe I decide it's too warm. I can pull down the color temp a little bit as well. These are the women of the organization doing their sort of power pose. I like it. One thing I don't do, you guys aren't going to see me doing any like teeth whitening, anything like that. That's not really something I do for this type of work. If I had to do that level of retouching for event photography, I probably wouldn't do event photography, to be honest, because I don't like editing. I chose event photography because it works for me, for my personality, what my taste is as far as like or how much I like to edit, all that stuff, right? But if I included like skin retouching and all, in event photography coverage, that would be insane. It would take me way longer to do the job. I would have to charge way more to make it worth it, and that's not an option. I'm already charging pretty much the ceiling as far as like what people can charge for event photography. All right, and here, if you guys joined me earlier, impromptu headshot that they asked for. Basically, I had to quickly run away from the step and repeat, grab these shots of the director of the organization. I'm proud. Sometimes you're going to be asked to do that, and I'm proud of what I was able to get considering the time allowed. All right. I'm going to keep doing this on my own. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. If you guys want to support my channel, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Please consider checking out that link if you're really interested in learning event photography, because that will link you to a resource page I have in which I tell you guys about each video I've made, what you'll get out of it. Might save you some time. You don't have to rely on the YouTube algorithm, etc. For anyone that does want to support me, I need to get better at asking for that kind of thing because I want this channel to be sustainable. You can support me on Patreon. On my Patreon, it's not about just giving me money. My Patreon's about me being able to help you further in ways I can't just by making YouTube content. So the objective with that, the end objective, is to be able to offer extra help to people, whether that's critiques, help with their portfolio, business coaching, etc. Just more support than I can give by just making YouTube content. Anyway, I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Last thing, on Friday, I will be doing a live critique with Douglas Barnes, who I think joined us today. We'll be doing a critique, I think what we were planning on doing is a critique slash portfolio advice, or just, I think it's going to end up being more of a conversation as I help Doug kind of whittle down the best images on his website, just a second pair of eyes for him. I've looked at his work. It's very good. So I don't want to come off as like I'm the expert and, you should all just listen to me. I respect his work. And so we're going to have a conversation about it. And that's pretty much that. So please join us on Friday. I think starting next week, I might just live stream once a week. I'm probably going to limit it to that. I keep seeing my numbers and subscribers drop because of these. Even though I keep saying it doesn't matter, I care about you guys that are actually watching this more than people that just casually subscribe. But it's disheartening. It really is. I'm not going to lie. Like, my convictions are challenged all the time when you just see when I'm seeing my subscriber base drop. It's not dropping, but the new subscribers are not significantly outpacing the people that are unsubscribing from these live streams. So I went from gaining like 230-ish subscribers a month to now it's like 70. And a lot of that has to do with actually what's going on with COVID-19. People are not watching event photography videos because they're not booking event photography jobs. And I understand that. But again, I'm not gonna, my convictions are challenged, but ultimately I'm not gonna really sway. I know a lot of people would probably have recommended, oh, maybe you should start making more film content or this kind of content again. And there's no doubt that content would do well, but I really decided a while ago I wanted to talk about event photography because other people weren't really doing it, and I know there is a need for it, so I'm going to keep doing it. Thank you guys all for joining me today. I will see you guys Friday.